ride the signal through the unknown. This is the cryptic current.
The billionaire's assets were primarily physical holdings like warehouses and storage facilities. Arson is a common method in insurance fraud cases involving high-value commercial properties. Such fires often follow a pattern of suspicious timing, coinciding with financial distress. Investigators typically look for accelerants and multiple points of origin in these cases. The scale of this attempted destruction suggests desperation rather than careful planning. Similar cases have involved business owners facing bankruptcy or massive debt obligations. Insurance companies employ forensic accountants to trace financial motives in such incidents. The attempt to destroy assets worth over $100 million represents an extreme response to financial pressure. This was not an act of defiance or protest, but a desperate attempt to generate heat and power. The move would ultimately reveal how quickly immense wealth can vanish under pressure. Pressure can lead to irreversible mistakes in high-stakes private ventures. This case centers on a business venture that went dangerously wrong despite significant resources. Such scenarios demonstrate how technical systems can fail when operating beyond their design limits. The attempt to generate power reflects a pattern seen in other high-pressure industrial incidents. Financial pressure often forces decisions that compromise safety protocols in private operations. The rapid loss of wealth in such cases typically follows a cascade of technical failures. The vessel was a substantial industrial asset, representing a major capital investment in a specialized maritime sector. This was not a personal luxury craft, but a working ship whose value was directly tied to the performance of a volatile industry. When market conditions deteriorated, the asset's value collapsed, creating a severe financial imbalance. The owner faced mounting contractual obligations that required continued financial outlays despite the asset's declining worth. This created a perfect storm where operational costs, debt servicing, and market losses converged simultaneously. The result was a massive, looming liability that threatened to overwhelm the owner's financial position. Such scenarios are not uncommon in capital-intensive industries where asset values can fluctuate dramatically. The combination of high fixed costs and variable market returns creates inherent financial vulnerability for asset owners. The situation escalated from a boardroom crisis to a physical one on the open water. Several key facts are documented in financial and legal records. First, the core asset had plummeted in value. This type of financial collapse often creates immense pressure on stakeholders. Such pressure can shift conflicts from corporate settings to more direct, physical environments. The open water presents unique challenges, isolating parties from immediate external intervention. Documented records provide a factual baseline, separating known events from speculation. This pattern, where financial distress precedes a physical confrontation, is observed in other documented maritime incidents. This financial phenomenon is common in capital-intensive industries like shipping, aviation, and heavy manufacturing. When market values plummet below operational costs, assets transform from revenue generators into financial burdens. Insurance premiums remain high regardless of market value, covering potential environmental disasters and liability claims. Docking fees accumulate daily at commercial ports, with charges for berthing, utilities, and port services. Crew salaries represent fixed operational costs that continue regardless of the vessel's earning capacity. This creates a paradox where ownership becomes more expensive than abandonment, yet legal obligations prevent simple disposal. Similar situations occur with commercial aircraft during industry downturns, where parking and maintenance costs exceed asset value. The term, negative asset, describes this precise economic condition across multiple transportation and industrial sectors. The cancellation of the charter agreement represented a catastrophic financial blow. This type of long-term rental contract is common in maritime industries, providing stable revenue for vessel owners. The guaranteed income from such agreements often serves as collateral for securing ship financing from banks. When the charter was canceled, tens of millions in future payments vanished instantly. This created a domino effect. Without that guaranteed income, the original financing structure collapsed. The vessel's entire economic foundation had been built around this contractual obligation. Such cancellations can trigger default clauses in loan agreements, creating immediate financial pressure. The loss transformed what was meant to be a profitable asset into a significant liability. The financial model collapsed overnight, indicating a sudden and complete failure of the economic structure supporting the operation. Third, and most strikingly, the owner ordered the ship's crew to activate the vessel's boilers at maximum capacity for an extended period. This is the burning of value, a deliberate destruction of assets that could otherwise be salvaged or repurposed. Operating boilers at maximum capacity for extended periods creates extreme stress on the entire propulsion system. This practice accelerates wear on critical components, reducing the vessel's operational lifespan significantly. Such deliberate overloading represents a calculated decision to destroy capital value rather than preserve it. The combination of financial collapse and physical asset destruction creates a complete breakdown scenario. This pattern of simultaneous economic and physical destruction appears in various industrial failure cases. The intent, as later investigations revealed, was not to destroy the vessel, but to generate steam and electricity. This was a calculated attempt to falsely demonstrate the ship's operational viability. The goal was to deceive potential buyers or inspectors during a final assessment. It was a last-ditch effort to secure a sale and avert total financial loss for the owners. This segment addresses crucial limits and common public misconceptions about the event. A key misunderstanding involves the scale and risk of tampering with a ship's propulsion systems. Such systems are complex and dangerous to operate under false pretenses or without proper procedures. The attempt highlights a pattern of desperate financial maneuvers in maritime history, where appearance was prioritized over actual seaworthiness. This was not a simple act of arson or a dramatic bonfire of cash. The value was destroyed through the deliberate overconsumption of ultra-expensive marine diesel fuel. This fuel is significantly more costly than standard diesel due to its specialized formulation for large marine engines. The intentional wear and tear on the ship's complex machinery served as a secondary method of destruction. Marine engines and propulsion systems represent massive capital investments, with maintenance and part replacement costs running into the millions. Essentially, money was being burned through the smokestack in a calculated, operational manner. This method avoids the immediate evidence of a fire while achieving the same financial outcome over time. We do not know the full internal decision-making process behind this operational sabotage. The decision was made within a closed circle, where specific pressures and assurances remain confidential. Legal outcomes for those involved are largely obscured, with many cases settled privately or resulting in complex civil judgments. This often meant outcomes were not dramatic criminal convictions, but rather financial or administrative resolutions. A common misconception is viewing this as an isolated, irrational act by a single individual. In reality, such events typically emerge from systemic patterns within organizations or groups. Similar cases in corporate or institutional settings show how decisions can cascade through multiple layers. The lack of public criminal proceedings doesn't indicate absence of accountability mechanisms. Civil settlements often involve detailed investigations and financial consequences that remain confidential. The initial, over-leveraged purchase created a dangerous financial foundation, similar to building a structure on unstable ground. This high-risk strategy involved borrowing heavily against future earnings, a pattern seen in many financial collapses. The reliance on a single charter contract concentrated all risk into one point of failure, eliminating any safety net. This created a trap where the entire operation's viability depended on one unpredictable external factor. The refusal to cut losses earlier is a common cognitive bias, where decision-makers throw good resources after bad. This escalation of commitment locks in a failing course, preventing a strategic retreat that could have minimized damage. The final act was a catastrophic attempt to solve a financial problem with a physical action, a fundamental category error. This represents a desperate leap from the realm of ledgers and contracts into tangible, irreversible consequences. This financial case reveals a fundamental principle of asset valuation. An asset's true worth is determined solely by what another party is willing to pay for it. This principle applies regardless of the original purchase price or recorded value. Documentation showed an asset valued in the tens of millions on a billionaire's ledger. However, the active market assessment rendered it a financial liability instead. This discrepancy between book value and market value is a common pattern in high-risk investments. The case demonstrates how perceived value can collapse when market demand disappears. It serves as a stark lesson in financial risk and the volatility of asset pricing. The sunk cost fallacy describes the tendency to continue investing in a failing endeavor simply because significant resources have already been committed. This cognitive bias can escalate decisions from personal finances to major industrial projects, where the scale of initial investment creates immense pressure to continue. The case illustrates escalation of commitment, where each new investment of destroyed fuel or equipment was justified by the prior losses, not by realistic prospects of success. This pattern prevents a rational cutoff point, as acknowledging the initial loss becomes psychologically more difficult than pursuing the failing course. Organizational and individual pressure compounds the effect, with stakeholders often fearing the consequences of admitting failure more than the costs of continuing. The mechanism is well documented in business and psychology, showing how emotional attachment to past investments can override logical decision-making. Comparatively, this fallacy operates similarly across contexts, whether in a small venture or a colossal industrial operation, driven by the same core psychological drivers. Ultimately, it serves as a stark case study in how pressure, financial, social, and psychological, can lock individuals and organizations into destructive cycles. Financial pressure can create a psychological tunnel vision, narrowing options until only one path seems viable. This phenomenon is observed in various high-stakes situations, where obligations accumulate beyond manageable levels. The practical insight involves recognizing when an asset or situation has become fundamentally unsustainable. No amount of investment or effort can create value where the underlying conditions do not support it. This pattern appears in documented cases where continued commitment to failing ventures led to greater losses. The psychological trap involves the inability to accept sunk costs and cut losses before reaching a critical point. Understanding this dynamic helps identify warning signs before reaching irreversible decision points. The market's perception of value cannot be forced, regardless of the resources applied to change it. The refusal to acknowledge certain risks can lead to catastrophic financial consequences. This pattern is observed in various industries where warning signs were ignored. The financial impact often follows a predictable escalation from initial neglect to major loss. Similar mechanisms have been documented in engineering failures and environmental disasters. The cost accumulates through multiple layers of oversight failure before reaching critical mass. This represents a measurable pattern rather than an isolated incident.
If the signal hooked you, subscribe and catch the next ripple.